Yep.
Done. Pause, stop recording. I think we're recording. Hi.
Hey.
Hi from Katati, California.
Hi from, I'm
Iman?
in Amman,
Yeah.
Jordan. Yes.
Oh, God.
Yes.
What's your home like there?
Well, today was eventful because, believe it or not, after we've been here almost 2.5 months, and just today we got our stuff from New York. So we've been living out of a suitcase with a baby for almost 3 months, and our stuff just arrived. So I've been unpacking boxes all day and organizing and that kind of stuff.
Are you on lockdown there?
We are, yeah. It's sort of, it's easing up. It's sort of, it comes and goes. They have this system where during the week there's a curfew at night, and then on the weekends it's a full lockdown. Like nobody can go out shopping or anything. But it's Ramadan here too, so that also adds another layer of sort of confinement in a way. Just people stay in during the day and they lay low, and life really happens in the evening during Ramadan. So
does that mean, but if you're not participating in Ramadan, does that mean it's you have no choice but to follow the rules, so to speak?
I mean, sort of, yeah. Actually, I someone told me that it's actually illegal to sort of drink and eat in public, so, which I didn't realize that it was that that sort of those rules,
Well, this leads me to a question. It's not on my list of questions, which I have here.
Oh wow, you have it printed and
We're only
everything.
supposed to do 3 people, but sorry. Moises and I have too much to say to each other. Every morning I drink a smoothie that I make.
Yeah.
So it may be that you'll see me wiping, but I wonder, like, what did you have for breakfast?
I'm a coffee person. I'm sort of first thing out of bed, even before brushing my teeth, I go make a coffee. And these days we wake up super early. Our daughter is up by 5:30 usually. So, but I'm a morning person too, anyway. So that's not a bother. And I don't really eat much in the morning. I mean, I have coffee, and then maybe a few hours later I'll have something. I mean, today I had eggs and that really yummy flat bread that they make in the Middle East, and you have olives, and so it's that's sort of breakfast.
Getting better. That's what I want to do. I want to be tempted away from my everyday smoothie, and that you started getting me there.
But that sounds really healthy, Jim. That sounds really healthy.
They say I eat really healthy. I just eat too much all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, with confinement and with these lockdowns, I don't blame you.
Yeah. Have you been away at all?
Have I been what?
Away on work at all?
I've been doing a bit of traveling in Jordan. But just recently, I mean, at the beginning, I was sort of just hunkering down with my family. It was such a strange time, sort of, we were new to the country, and then this thing happened, and we just didn't really know exactly how bad it was here. And it turned out to be actually, a blessing really to be here as opposed to New York, for example.
And when you're traveling now, when you've been traveling recently, is it just to look, or is it for work?
I mean, it's sort of a bit of both. I've been trying to force myself to sort of respond in a way, photographically, I guess, to what's going on, but it hasn't been easy. I mean, it's just a lot of looking around and a lot of false starts and a lot of but anyways, I'm sort of picking up the pace a little bit more recently, and I'm making it an effort to sort of try to figure out what's happening here. Jordan, as you know, is a big sort of host country for refugees, and so I'm sort of looking into that angle, and so I've been photographing they're sort of all spread out around the country, different places, and so I've been trying to focus on that recently. Yeah.
It must be hard. I mean, it's hard to try to figure out how to image what we're in right now, because it's so complicated and so confusing, and we can't get close in some ways. We can't get close to others. And certainly you, as you know, a very well respected photojournalist, quote unquote, one of the reasons why your work is so strong is because you have gotten so close. And I would imagine people think the same of me, that with my work, that, you know, I get close with words, or I get close with people. So you go into, and it's hard to go into now because we have to be away. So how are you dealing with, how are you thinking about, is now a time for photojournalism to reinvent itself? You know, is it an opportunity? Is it?
Yeah,
These are big questions, I know.
It's big now, but it's a very relevant question, you know, and no, absolutely. I think there's an opportunity. I wish that I would seize that opportunity. You know, I mean, I find myself sort of running into a lot of dead ends, and
like what?
You know, not well, just, you know, sort of
permissions.
Well, besides the permissions is, you know, so I guess in terms of the visual language, you know, like as you say, you know, we're used to working close to people, and how do you do that if you're not able to, you know, and sort of rethinking that, trying to be creative with these restrictions it's not easy, you know, and especially also, I mean, here in the Middle East, I mean, it's a culture of really being close to people, of hugging, of kissing, of like sitting down for tea before you even have a conversation, you know, it's very sort of warm that way, you know, and it's just so unnatural. It's so unnatural to have to suddenly sort of operate, you know, in a different way, you know. So well, I mean, it's a natural for me and a natural for my subjects, you know, and that's when it gets sort of tricky, you know.
I mean, you know, I mean, as a conflict photographer, you've put yourself at risk too many times, I'm sure. And now, if you're doing your work in conflict and there's a virus, I would imagine you're doubly at risk, and it's doubly scary. And then you're a father, and you know, I mean, all that stuff, and you're getting older. Like, how are you? I mean,
yeah, these all factors
really
in, you know,
an unsure time. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, I guess you try to sort of think about the silver lining on all of what you just mentioned, you know, and one thing about getting old, hopefully, is that sort of you're a bit wiser too, and maybe you're able to sort of you know, think about different ways of telling a story in you know, in a way that's still touching, but again, I mean, I honestly, I haven't figured it out, Jim. That's the answer. I mean,
well,
you know,
it leads me to another question: is what's the most stupid thing you did, or a couple of stupid things you did in conflict that no one should have done, and you did it, and you got something that you wanted, or didn't? I don't know.
Yeah, you know that the
admit it. Come on,
the ones there's several, you know, but the ones I remember are the ones that you know, you sort of put yourself through something very difficult, and it's for nothing, you know, and at the end you couldn't even take a picture, or you know, I mean, there's many times where, well, you know, a few times that I sort of got myself in a situation where, you know, there were things happening and it was just impossible, and it was very, very dangerous sort of situation.
Where were you?
You know?
Where were you?
I mean, the last one probably was in Libya a few years ago, where I was, I joined this patrol of what they call coast guards, but it was basically a militia that was going out to sea to intercept the rubber boats where, you know, the migrants were taken to go into Italy, you know, and basically, you know, basically what happened is that we ended up running into a boat that had their own armed guards, and we just got into basically a shootout in the middle of the sea, pitch dark, black, and very close quarters, and all I was able to do is just lay flat on the boat and hope that that was really not a good situation, but that's what I'm saying, sometimes the ones I remember are the ones where really you feel just, besides feeling stupid, you just feel irresponsible, and
yeah
and especially when the other layer of that is especially when you have a family, then you really you have to sort of take that into consideration, and not be so selfish sometimes, you know what I mean?
yeah
Which is tricky because it's you sort of, it's not like you do it out of selfishness, but it says you're on that zone and you really want to get that story, and sometimes you're in very unstable, sort of unpredictable situations, and something is bound to happen sooner or later, and if you do it long enough, eventually sort of something eventually happens,
that
and
you feel that.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that we've all have lost friends and know sort of how this lottery works, and of course it's less and less appealing as sort of you get older and as you have a family, etc. But the challenge is to, because I'm as committed as I've ever been, but you have to find different ways of still being effective and being a good storyteller. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's what I've been thinking a lot, in in preparation and talking to you. I mean, one of the wonderful things about Magnum is that we can come together, not just in this way, but as people. I'm not a conflict photographer, yet I'm, I do other stuff, and vice versa. So it's interesting how our stories are shared and how we learn from each other on how to navigate this kind of world of photography.
Yeah.
And so, even though I may not go to Libya, I may be in a situation where I learn from you, or I understand better what the choices are.
And it works both ways, Jim. I mean, and that's exactly why we love Magnum. It's this ability to learn from each other and to be inspired by each other, and I don't need to tell you how much your work has been sort of a guiding light, in terms of working with refugees or working with at-risk communities, etc. So and it's about being effective, Jim, and you are super effective with what you do.
Well, I wonder sometimes, I mean, whether I am, and whether the work means anything, and which leads to a big question with you. You've been a staff photographer at Newsday, you've worked for a variety of agencies, now you're with Magnum. You've gone through situations where you're just dealing with the news cycle and things changing and then turning over to the next news cycle.
Right.
I mean, we're stuck in one now, but still, we can see that that's going to end at some point, and there'll be other ones that will creep in. And I just wonder, it's just like, it must get really tiring. And I wonder if this is a big question for me sometimes. It's like, have you ever lost faith? Like, what's it all for? Like, why risk myself? Why do this? I mean, does it really change anything? I mean, is the world a better place because of these pictures or things I've done? Sorry. That's a big one.
It's a big one.
But it's important, no? I mean,
yeah. It's. I mean, of course, you go through the motions. I mean, I've been doing this not as long as you have, but close to it. And and you know, there's the phase where you're very idealistic about things, and you feel like you're on a mission, and you sort of feel a little bit like you know, this higher sense of purpose, and then life changes, you grow, and your life also takes you in different directions, and you know, so I don't know, I mean, right now for me it's not so much about this ideal of working for the greater good or anything, but I think it's more of a sort of a working class sort of sense of commitment in a way, you know, of like what you're sort of here to do, you know, and as long as sort of that keeps you honest and interested in telling other people's stories, I mean, that to me, you know, it's a battle that I'm ready to take in a way, you know.
So in
I
effect,
don't know. I mean,
you don't lose faith then. You haven't lost faith, even when you're on the bottom of the boat and you're like
I guess the definition of faith has
pissing in your
changed.
pants,
Yeah,
big, you know.
yeah. I mean, maybe the definition of what faith means to me, that has changed, maybe, you know. But I'm still, you know, I feel committed. I feel excited about, you know, some of the stories that I get to do, and you know, it's sort of I just don't know what else I would do with myself, you know, if I wasn't doing this.
Right. No, I get that, but you know, the thing that I find for myself, and and maybe you too, is that even if I'm not questioning the work that I'm doing, my intuition is leading me to do work, let's say in the South right now, which is what I'm working.
Yeah.
I still then look at the work that I've made, and then I'm filled with doubt. Like, the pictures are not as good as somebody else's, or, you know, what's the purpose of this? Or it looks like stuff I've already seen before.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that, I don't know, I would imagine that you might have those feelings too. I mean,
Of course.
I'm always comparing. Maybe you're comparing too.
Yeah. No, of course. And you know, sometimes I'm better or worse at channeling those doubts into something positive, you know, but it doesn't, I don't succeed all the time, you know. There's funks that you get into, you know, and that you question everything. You feel that you're just repeating yourself, or you feel that your language is not sort of evolving or growing, you know, and especially, you know, I think in sort of the work that you know, I've been doing as a photojournalist, you know, there's these quite sort of strict traditions and guidelines that you know, that it's just hard to sort of move away from that, you know, and that's a real challenge, you know, and it's something that to me, I mean, I'm constantly sort of thinking about, you know, how to you know, how to evolve a little bit and not repeat those same sort of guidelines, composition rules, and the same sort of approach to the visual language, you know, and that's what is challenging, and that's what fills me with doubt sometimes, and you know, and sometimes you know, sometimes you succeed and then you feel good, and but it's a sort of give and take, and you know,
how do you get out of the doubt? I mean, how do you work your way through it? Because I mean, I know we're not the only ones who feel that shit.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's always.
I mean, how do you find your focus again? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, well, that's sort of, you know, going back to sort of the kind of profession, or the you know, the working class thing that I mentioned before, is that in a way the next assignment comes and it sort of forces you to get on with it, you know what I mean, and it just kind of gives you an excuse to go out and try again, you know, and I wonder what I would do if I didn't maybe have that little push sometimes, you know, that makes you go out on the street or go out and work on a story. You know, I'm you know, I'm not the best sort of self-motivating type of guy, you know, and sometimes it just takes a little push, you know, and then you sort of run with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I do. But it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to run,
Yeah.
because, you know, you just feel there's just like where to start or how to get out of it, or, you know, we go down our own rabbit holes that it, you know, it's hard to find our way out. I,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I know for me, I wonder for you, you know, what happens if there's a period when those jobs don't come through, when other people are getting calls, or other people, for me, other people are having shows, or, you know, other people are, you know, are in a gallery or something else like that. Like that, those moments of self-doubt are the hardest for me personally,
Yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
competitive and I want to, you know, I want to be in the conversation. And if no one's calling me, I'm not in the
Sure.
conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm very competitive as well, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and for me, it's important to have a voice, you know, and on not on everything, you know, I don't need to, you know, sort of get involved on every single
Sure,
story,
sure,
but
sure.
there's regions that really mean something to me, and that I've put in my time, and that I've had a commitment with, and I feel like I have something to say, you know,
Right.
and maybe in those situations it's a bit easier to sort of you know, sort of go out and produce work, but look, it's not easy by any means, and that's really, I think, at the heart of of our sort of predicament in a way, you know, is you know, what we do is it's a very sort of individual solo type of process, you know,
But what's interesting is that's why we're in Magnum, a range, a real diversity of people, even more so now than ever before, and we're all in our own way. I don't want to say competitive, may not be the right word, but self-involved in trying to push through with our ideas and the work that we're doing.
yeah,
And we are competitive, I guess, you know.
yeah,
And it's interesting, that balance between not pushing someone else out of the way, but respecting where they are, seeing what they do is okay, and yet not follow, but also moving to the front if you can with the work that you're doing. I don't know if that's a good
yeah,
analogy.
that's no, it is, but it's a tricky balance, you know, it's sort of juggling so many things, and natural sort of reactions to things that sometimes, you know, it takes some perspective to get to that point where you know where you stand, and where you appreciate and learn from others, you know what I mean?
So I mean, I'm going to go back a little bit if you don't mind,
Yeah.
switch gears. But so when you first landed in Afghanistan, and I've heard you describe it, or, you know, as like a Lord of the Rings almost situation,
Hmm.
how do you get to the front? How do you, you know, you don't want to like climb over another photographer to get closer to what the action that's going on, but how do you navigate that time or that situation where
Yeah.
respectfully, is that an apt
Yeah,
question?
well, no, it is. Yeah, I mean, look, in that particular case, I was actually traveling with a couple of photographer friends, and we were sort of moving together, and you know, taking pictures together, and we sort of, we kind of needed each other to get through the weirdness of
Sure.
being, you know, we were also the same generation. We sort of
Mhm.
first time in Afghanistan. You know, it was, you know, just a few weeks after 9/11 we arrived there, so everything was sort of upside down and weird and confusing, and we sort of, you know, we you know, we kind of helped each other and try to, you know, keep each other safe. And so in that sense, you know, it wasn't an issue to
No,
you
but
know, to sort of,
if you're in that situation and something's
yeah,
happening to your right, you know, 20 feet
yeah,
away, you, I mean, I guess you could all run to that picture, but whoever gets there first, it might get the best
oh
pictures,
yeah,
so to
yeah,
speak.
absolutely.
So
And I
how do you
was
deal
never
with that?
getting
I guess that's what I know. Do you have to just be, you have to be a fast runner, or?
Well, you need to be, I guess, humble and accept that you will not always get the best picture, you know. And in fact, at that time, I was never getting the best pictures, you know. But anyways, that you know, comes with the territory. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, have you worked in this sort of like surrounded with other friends, or you've always sort of found your way? I
Well, I
mean,
definitely have collaborated a lot with people,
yeah.
and I mean, Alessandra and I often have, when we try to photograph together, it's tricky. I mean, it's tricky because we both want to do it a certain way. So,
Right.
you know, and then it
But I
gets,
think she's got a sharper elbow than you do, Jim.
she has sharper elbow and tongue. So I basically shy away, but I also probably am obnoxious too. So we shouldn't go there now because she's going to love you, babe. Okay. I mean, now you threw me. I mean, actually, going back to conflict, I mean, what is a good image in what is a good image in conflict photography?
What is a
What
good
is a good
image?
image to you? Yeah, I mean, how do you rate an image? Is it the
Yeah.
one that shows the most pain? And
You know, that also I think has evolved over the years, you know, and I mean, I sort of I remember at the beginning, you know, you sort of try to do this kind of gymnastics with the camera of like, you know, sort of having everything perfectly composed, foreground, background, so many layers, etc. And now I'm most happy with simplicity, you know, and with a real sort of connection
mm,
with my subject, and
mm,
that's changed, you know, because before I grew up in this tradition of being this fly on the wall kind of thing, you know, and that worked for me for several years, and but then eventually I think I reached the point where I wanted something more, you know. And you talk
mm-hmm.
about questioning, you know, your profession, the way you do things. I mean, that was a big sort of wall that I hit at one point, you know, of like, okay, I mean, I'm a fly on the wall, but I'm also a person, and I'm human, and I have emotions, and I have a need to connect with the people that I photograph, as
Mm.
opposed to seeing them almost with a surveillance camera in a way,
Sure,
you know
sure,
what I mean?
detached eye, sure.
Yeah. So to me, for me, that was a big,
When
maybe
was that? When
shifting
did that
point.
happen?
You know, that probably happened in the mid 2000s, you know, like around 2004 or 5, when I was in Iraq.
Uh-huh.
Um, and and of course, you know, one thing is realizing that, and another thing is putting it to practice, and being sort of effective with that language, and that took, I think, longer, and it's something I'm still, you know, challenged by. And but you know, this quest for simplicity to me is very important now, as opposed to beautiful light and beautiful background and foreground, and you know what I mean, this sort of perfectly composed image that perhaps is beautiful to look at, but doesn't leave room to ask any questions, you know.
Sure,
And
sure. I understand that completely.
yeah.
I mean, it's actually I'm always trying to make beautiful pictures in any kind of situation, but I might lose my train of thought here, but I think that it's really the mistakes that I make. It's when I'm not trying to make something beautiful
Yeah.
that the power of it often comes through.
Yeah,
You know, I don't,
I
right,
I
right.
I agree 100%. I mean, and a lot of times it is mistakes, you know, and it's a surprise when you see them, and you know, but that's something also, you know, from spending, you know, a fair amount of time working in conflict areas. You know, you realize that at the end of the day, what really remains are the questions more than answers, you know, and I think that that should be reflected in, or I wanted to reflect that in my work, you know, as opposed to having these beautiful sort of, you know, ready to eat kind of pictures, you know, and I felt like, you know, the story was more nuanced. It was unclear. You know, there's always this sort of, and it's something that I talk about sometimes a lot when I try to sort of, you know, talk about my work to students or whatever. It's this victim perpetrator shifting of roles that really happens in conflict, you know, and how do you approach that, you know, when you don't really know sort of which side is the you know, the righteous one, you know, and there really isn't one in war, and that's sort of the one of the kind of conclusions that I've come up with, you know. And anyway, so these questions, this ambiguity, this self-doubt, I sort of felt like I wanted to reflect that in my work, you know, and that's when I started thinking along different lines, and that was around the time too. I mean, you know, I joined Magnum in 2010, so I think by that point these sort of ideas were a little bit more thought through, and but that was one of the main motivations for me to want to be surrounded by a different group of people, you know, and to try to sort of be better at that, you know.
You know, you just got me thinking about the kind of the sameness, if that's the word, sameness of conflict. I mean, wars are just they're wherever
repetitive,
you are. They're just
down to the body language, down to the fashion of it, down to, you know, things are you know, I mean, it's a cycle, you know, and it repeats itself, and at the core of it, it's something very, very similar in all the different places that I've been, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it must give one lots of understanding. At the same time, it must be confusing that they even still happen. But that's my bias. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not the last questions, but I hope. But one, when you're in those places, maybe different than now. Maybe you have. I'm just wondering about your dreams and nightmares. Like, do you have them? Do you have them more when you're there, when you're in these kind of tentative, conflicting situations, or now that you've been home for a while and you haven't been able to leave, and the longest period you haven't left in a long time, you're having more nightmares? I don't know.
You know, I mean, I really feel blessed about the fact that I'm not a big nightmare type person, you know. I mean, I'm sure that my issues come and, you know, manifest themselves in different ways, but luckily not through nightmares. And I do dream and about bizarre things sometimes, like everybody else.
Well, I mean, come on, give us a good one.
I mean, no, I don't have a good one, but you know, I mean, sometimes about food, sometimes about love, you know, about life, really, you know. But I'm really not a big. I mean, there's, you know, it's happened, of course. You know, I've had sometimes, you know, bad dreams but it's
not related to the work.
Well, I mean, no. I mean, sometimes, you know, that sort of, it's not a recurrent dream by any means, but you know, you know, I've had dreams about, you know, that typical thing where you're running and you cannot advance, you know, or like that you get to a place and, you know, you forgot your camera, things like this, you know, and you know, but again, not about, you know, sort of nasty stuff that can really mess with your psyche, you know. So I let's keep it that way.
Yeah, no, really, knock on wood, especially if you're seeing this nasty stuff. Okay, I thought maybe if you want, you could ask me a question. This is a conversation, and it doesn't, and I want to break rules as many as possible. So if there's anything you want to ask me, please. within reason?
Well, well, no, I mean, look, I'm curious. I recently became a father, and
Yeah.
and this is something that I think is changing me, but I cannot put my finger on it quite yet. You know what I mean? I know there's something happening, and beyond the obvious, of course. I mean, of course, I want to spend time with my daughter, and some of the priorities change, but I wonder for you, how has that been, and has it been a positive is there, I mean, has it always been a positive thing to be a family man like you have been for these, for all of these years, or there's,
That's a good
I mean,
question.
I don't want to say regrets, because nobody regrets family. Okay. I mean, I'm not going there, but that sacrifice that I guess we all have to make at one point between family and work, and how have you managed that, or has it been a sacrifice for you ever?
I just listened to a Robert Adams talk that he gave, a conversation that he had, in which he spoke about kids and not having kids, and the choice of not doing that. And the choice was made, I think, because he felt like it was more important for him to make the art than to be compromised by having a family. And he didn't say it in a way that was disrespectful of people who had kids. It's just that he knew that if he was going to dedicate himself in the way that he needed to do, that it would be not smart for him and his wife to have children. That was and for me, there was never any question. And I think it's because, as a teacher, some of the best ideas I would get would be, stealing them from my students. And I think as a father or as a family person, some of the best ways of being human or understanding humanity are from being with a child or watching a child grow into an adult, and how they navigate and how you help them navigate, and how the lessons to be learned hopefully are carried on to the next generation, to the next, to the next, to the next. So where it has compromised my work at times, but I'm driven enough to just push through that and make my time to do my work, and also make my time to be with family. It's not an easy balance, and sometimes I'm a little bit too much with my work when I'm with my family, and vice versa. I'm too much with my family and worried about them when I'm should be working. But generally, I think it makes me a better person. And that's kind of, my path has always been to sort of try to be as, try to learn as much as possible and not get lazy in that effect of getting better, so to speak.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's precisely this humanity that you're talking about, that I just, I think there's really a before and after, when you're sort of single doing your thing, and just, and I wonder, for the people that are sort of committed, then we know several of them, that for them there's just no room for anybody else. It's only about their work, and I just wonder if, how that, I mean, it sounds like a limitation in itself, and it's almost like,
I think both decisions are limitations in certain ways. And it's like the choice of which one you want. I mean, having a relationship with somebody is a limit, has its pluses and minuses, so it's none of it is easy. Maybe the easiest is to be alone, but then you miss out on that contact that we were talking about. And that contact is important when we're trying to make work about what we see, or tell work about what we see out in the world.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
But do you, another question, follow-up question, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and these are hard too. Like, but do you feel as you grow older, I mean, do you feel more committed, less committed? Do you take things as seriously as
To my
you
work?
did to your work? Yeah. You know, I mean, do you feel, does that joy that you might have felt early on, has it changed or you've, I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm still in the game. I'm still in the game. I mean, I'm a little frustrated because I feel like I'm taking the same, often making the same work over and over and over again. But,
yeah,
no, I'm still in the game. It's just the question is how to mutate it, how to reinvent myself each time. And that's where I like collaboration. That's where I like community, where you can just sort of talk out ideas and work them out. And no, I haven't lost anything. No, actually, more than ever, I have nothing else I can do. I'm a okay farmer, but not a very good one,
Yeah. We just started planting some tomatoes. We have a little terrace here, and that's our sort of project for this summer. Let's see what happens. But I wish I could stay in the game at the same level and with the same attitude and with the same smile as you always have. For as long as you have, Jim. It's a big respect, man.
Well, vice versa. Vice versa. I kept it in. I think we should be ending this soon, probably because we're over our time limit. But
are we already?
Oh, I'm sure. The picture that you put up, I just want to give you a compliment. The photograph that talking about dreams, because this is what I dreamt about, is the photo that you put up for the Magnum square print sale this year.
Oh,
I dreamt that I was in the room with you.
Really? That was special,
and because it was out of time, it was truly out of time, and I guess Lord of the Rings, but I time traveled by when I looked at that photograph with you.
I'm glad that
you're for that. That's so good.
No, you're welcome, Jim. Weirdly enough, or interestingly enough, that was one of the last pictures I took in Afghanistan after working there for like almost 10 years, So, but yeah, it was a special room for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting us into the room with you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Well,
I
guess you have to go to sleep, and I have to actually get something done.
Okay, Jim.
Of course. I mean,
we'll continue these offline over a beer sometime. Hopefully,
of course.
When all of this madness is over. Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully sooner than later.
Okay, brother.
And love to the girls.
Same to you.
Okay.
Take care. Bye. See you. Bye.
Hello. Thanks to Jim and Moises for the last very nice conversation. Here we go for the last lottery. Maybe it's a bit predictable, but still. This photographer will ask the questions. Chris Anderson. And this photographer will answer. Oh. Me, Bieke de Porter. So yeah, that's it. So Chris, see you soon. Also, not to forget, this will not be the last conversation, as we are doing a second round. So for the photographers who still want to join, who didn't join in the first round, please let me know. All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.